Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna 128LDX string trimmer. The customer complaint is that it won't start. Well, let's take a look at this thing. You know, the first thing I like to do is check the fuel tank, but in this particular case, the thing's full of cobwebs. I don't know where they've been storing it or for how long. It's not too often that the smell of fuel in a tank makes me gag. But this stuff was pretty ripe. You know, I'm probably going to have to take a small sample of that and hide it under the toolbox of one of them Neanderthal 4-stroke knuckle draggers on the other side of the shop. Usually takes them about a week and a half to find the source of the stink. Alright, we got a brand new spark plug in here. So the customer tried to fix it himself. Or it's had recent service. Looking inside the cylinder, we're going to take a closer look at that a little bit later, but it has evidence of old fuel being run through this thing. And I'm going to show you what that looks like a little later on. I didn't see any scoring or anything like that. Finally got that nut to break loose on that air filter, or air filter cover. Which, by the way, the filter looks good, so he's either been doing regular maintenance or he reacted to it not starting by doing some maintenance for a change. Let's see if this thing's going to run. Alright, we verified that it does not start. We're going to put a spark checker on here to see if we have spark. That little green flashing light tells us that we did have spark. At least the ignition coil works. We didn't see a spark across the gap of the plug, but based on the smell of that fuel, I really don't think the ignition system is the problem here. Let's dump this rancid old stuff out of here and move forward. We're gonna have to dig into this carburetor. Yeah, I don't even like getting close to that funnel of fuel. It smells really bad. Let's take a look at the fuel filter. Yeah, well, there it is. It's a little dirty. Of course, it's not connected to anything anymore. So that's kind of a problem. So, among other things, this will get new fuel lines in a filter. Let's take off this air filter holder. The two 8mm nuts hold this whole cover on here, exposing the carburetor. The blue lever is for the choke. Primer is pretty dark, but it's still supple. It doesn't feel like it's going to crack or anything. So we pop the two fuel lines off, and then we got our throttle wire. It's got a little Z bend in it, and we pull that off of there. Now let's take a look at this piston skirt on the intake side. And you get a better idea of what I was seeing when I was looking through the spark plug hole. We're going to grab the camera here and give you a closer look at it. So do you see how brown and bronze colored it is inside of there? There's a better shot. That is from stale fuel. When you see that in there, brown like that, they've been running it on old fuel. And the biggest problem with that is not just that it might not run because the fuel's old. If you have that gummy fuel going through the engine, it can get jammed up around the piston rings and actually bind them up or get behind them and not let them compress. And you could ultimately end up with either scored cylinder or rings that won't expand and seal, and you have no compression. So we're digging into the carburetor, and we found a very stiff metering diaphragm. I'm not surprised. So we're going to put a new kit in here. And we're just kind of rushing through the video here of the carb refresh. You got a fuel pump and gasket on one side and a metering diaphragm and gasket on the other side. Now, what you don't see me doing here is, putting it in the ultrasonic cleaner or even removing the jets and spraying through them. I could have done that, and it wouldn't have been a bad idea. Lost a screw there, but luckily I found it. And not that it matters. I got like a couple of 5-gallon buckets of carbs sitting over there on the side. We would have found another screw. So we're going to put a pretty steep taper on this fuel line and push it through the tank. Now there's 10 different ways you could install these fuel lines. This is the way I did it this day. Big taper on the line. Reach in with the pliers, grab the line and pull it through. When I can reach in and grab the line, this is how I usually do it. Now we're going to flush cut that line and put our new filter on it. That fuel filter should be Husqvarna number 530095646. Now I want to trim the fuel line to length, so I got to kind of temporarily install the carburetor. Get it down into place here. Just line up how much line we need and cut it off. Now with the line that I have left, I'm going to put the fuel return line into the tank. And you just, for reference, you'll see that from this point of view, the line with the filter was on the right hand side and the fuel return line is on the left hand side in the picture. And when we look at the carburetor again, you'll see that on the left hand side is going to be that return line, and it's the one closest to the primer bulb. And then the other line, the other fitting on the carburetor, is going to be the one with the fuel filter on it. So we've pulled the line through the tank. We're going to flush cut the end of the line. And then we're going to put this little fitting on the end of the line. And all this is going to do is prevent that line from accidentally being pulled out of the tank. There we go. We got the little fitting on there. Now we should be able to pull that line up. And no matter how hard we pull on it, that's not going to come out of there. And if somebody were to bump it or catch it on a branch or something, it's not going to pop out. And we got a pretty good idea how long this line's going to be based on where the fittings are on the carburetor. So now we're going to reinstall the carb. There's our Z-bend throttle wire. We put that in the hole on the throttle linkage. Lay the carb over the two studs. And then we're going to push them lines on. So again, the line with the filter is farthest away from the primer bulb. Get that pushed on there nice and snug. And then the one closest to the primer bulb is just our fuel return line to tank. That's it. Pretty simple. Alright, that throttle cable has to go over a little ramp on the top there. And just do a quick function check on the throttle lever, and it looks like everything's working the way it should. Let's get this air filter holder in place. So after I have this all put together and put some fresh fuel in it, I'm going to start it up and run it. Or I should say, I'm going to see if it will run. And if it does run, then you're going to see some carbometer action. Just a few minutes of carburetor adjustment. I guess, you'll be able to see how the machine reacts to rich and lean settings on the high and the low speed jets. So if it does start, then that's all I'm going to have for you on the Husqvarna 128LDX string trimmer. It had some really stinky fuel in it. Thanks for watching. Later. What's this do? Where's this go?